Scott Allan, thank you so much for coming on the Inner Edison Podcast. I appreciate you being here today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
And I appreciate you having a really good mic. I mean, people don't understand how nice it is for us when we have a podcast for people to have the right equipment, because it's easier for everybody on the editing side, everybody else, and for people who are actually taking our podcast in and listening to it, it's much a better listening experience. So thank you.
Well, when I started doing these, I thought I better put a little bit of money into getting some good equipment. So I think it's paying off.
I think so too. All right, Scott. So I know you have a book that just came out and you have a series of books, but how did you get, and my first question is, how did you get over in Japan?
Well, that is a great question. Yeah. So I'm from Canada originally. I came here in 98, which is way back. So I've been here about 26, going on 27 years.
Wow.
And I got here through a series of events. I'll try to keep the story short, but basically I decided to do something that nobody else had done before, that I had known anyway. And I thought, what could one of those things be? And as I was doing some inner work and writing up my goals, I came to the conclusion that I need to go traveling. And I thought, I'm going to go traveling around the world. Why not? And that was it. So I put a plan in place. And from the moment I made that decision, which is maybe back in like 97 or something like that, I spent a year just planning things out, saving a bit of money, doing more inner work. And I just made a very a definitive decision that I never backed away from. And so what happened after I made that decision, a few months, by the way, the decision was this: I'm going to go traveling, not just around the world, I'm going to go to Thailand. And I was very specific about where I wanted to go, like for some reason, that was just the place that, on my radar. I think because a friend of mine had just come back from there, he's talking about how great it was. And they had all these Buddhas and nice weather and elephants. And I thought, all right, great, let's start there. So that was it. So I just started to put this plan together where I was going to, sell off all my stuff, which wasn't that much, like a car and a stereo. And whatever money I had put together, I was going to get on a plane. So now, making that decision, a few months into it, I came across an ad in the newspaper. And I don't even read the newspaper, but my roommate had brought home the paper this day. I just happened to pick it up, open it to a random page, and right there was an advertisement for this company that was recruiting. The ad said, recruiting for English teachers in Japan or something like that, and apply now. And I thought, oh, this could be a sign. Like, let's do it. Okay, so I just sent in a resume, really nice cover letter, and about a month later, I found myself in a hotel in downtown Vancouver having an interview with a Japanese businessman who owned a bunch of schools in Japan, and they were looking to recruit people and bring them over. So had the interview, got the job, and 6 months later, I was on a plane coming over here. They paid for everything, set us up in a homestay, and gave us a car, and I had cash. And I was working in Canada. I was an electrical engineer. That was my background. So I was working in...
I was trying to understand if you were a teacher, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the interesting thing is like... I don't have a background in education. Unfortunately, you don't need one. So they give you all the training when you got here. And basically, when they brought us over, it's like, you just have to be a native speaker, have a degree, and so
wow.
That was pretty much it, But fortunately, I didn't have to have any specific trainings. But anyway, I just wanted to try something that was, different and fun and liven things up a little bit in my life. Not that I had my life was, good before that. It's like, how much better can it be? So that was it. They brought us over, and I just knew, living here and just every day was a new day, and there was all kinds of new people to meet, and I just really got into the culture, started speaking the language. I didn't speak anything until I probably got off the plane, and they handed me this little phrase book saying, "You're going to need this." I was like, okay, so yeah, but it's been a journey for sure. And like I said, I've been here for, going on probably, I guess, half my life now. So
wow.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to pick up the language?
Well, it's probably something you're always working at, I guess. But in order for me to, function, I think within a year I was doing pretty good. Actually, I was doing better than most people, because a lot of people weren't actually studying it, or they would come here for 6 months or a year, and most people would end up going back home, which is more or less the case with a lot of people. But I just kept going with it, meeting a lot of friends, putting myself in situations Most of them are good. Where I had to use the language, like if I had to go to the hospital and you have to explain why you've got a stomach ache, it's like, well, how do I do that? So I'd like research, or I'd study about that. And back then, it was before the technology and all the apps
Right.
and stuff like that. So I mean, I was carrying around this big heavy dictionary trying to find stuff in there, with these phrase books, right? Now you got the, now the apps just translate for you, but that's a good thing because it's just accelerated learning process, like that's how I learn other languages now, just with the technology. But yeah, it took me about obviously a year to be relatively like functional, but then after that, you break it down into the different experiences that you're having. So like, a few years ago when I started doing my own taxes, I had to sit down with an accountant and talk about tax stuff, which I'd never done before, so it's like, that was something to learn, but anyway, yeah, it's just an ongoing learning process.
Now, do you do United States taxes, or are you fully in Japan?
I'm fully in Japan. Yeah. So, I'm not I mean, I still go
Well,
back to Canada.
You're Canadian. I apologize.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I still go. Yeah, I still go back to Canada occasionally, but no, I'm. I don't even have a bank account there anymore. So, which is the great thing because, like, I can run my business, of course, 100% online. All the money, like most of the money, does come in through the States and probably like other international countries. And the great thing is, like, it can just come into my bank account here. Apply. We handle the taxes, and it's all pretty good. I mean, yeah, there's always some. Loopholes you have to work through, and just there's always some challenges with that, I think, but no, I mean, you just work those out, so.
How's the tax rate there?
Pretty, I think, compared to the US and Canada, I think it's a bit lower, so it's like 27 to 30%, somewhere around there, but that depends on once more money started coming in, I started paying. So here's the thing: is like when I started publishing books, and then I that became my full-time thing, doing that in coaching. The income started going up and up and up and up, which is a good thing. But we didn't have an LLC set up at the time, so I was getting nailed on tax. I was paying like 30 to 40%, and when you set up your own business, as like, it gets a little bit expensive. There's suddenly like all these other taxes you have to pay for the business, which
Right.
I wasn't aware of. It was interesting because I worked in a corporation here for the first 20 years. I was working in a business school, and that was what I was doing. Was like the company would send us out to these big companies like Panasonic and Mitsubishi, and we would teach business English to their employees to get them ready for overseas travel and doing business, right? So I did that for 20 years. And when I left in 2019 to pursue, book publishing full time, I didn't know what I was really getting into, because I was doing it like years before that, but I always had like my book business was like the hobby, and then my real job was my real job, my 9 to 5, right? So I realized that didn't want to do that forever. So when I took the leap, I remember the first time, my first year of being an entrepreneur, I had to do my own taxes, which I'd never done before. So organization not being my thing, all my taxes went into a box, and they kind of just stayed there until the end of the year when I had to, take everything into an account. And I just remember taking in this box of stuff completely unorganized. Half of the receipts were from Starbucks, where I had my office, and this guy just looked at me and goes, he's like, yeah, this is going to be a challenge, So it took a few years to get things right, and to get things lined up. Mostly, I think that the biggest challenge was myself, just like overcoming those challenges of like, if I want to make this work, it's not just being good at the book stuff. I've got to get better. I've got to make myself better. So like this one, I got into like following Alex Hermosi and Tom Bilyeu and these other guys in the space, where they were, just like, they know what they're doing in business. So I started like watching a lot of their stuff and learning from that. So.
I mean, you can always hire the bookkeeper and the accountants that handle all that for you, because that's what most business owners should do. Don't handle it yourself. You're not good at it. It's just going to get you in trouble. And again, you still really need to know who the bookkeepers are, and the good ones, because I had one that really hurt me because they didn't do what they're supposed to do. And next thing I know, you have all this state coming after you for certain things that were supposed to have been done. So.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Actually, you're right. Yes, because I had a bookkeeper to begin with. Right? My friend introduced me to somebody, and that went okay for a couple of years. But after that, I found an actual accountant, And they really put us, like they said, you got to set up an LLC, do this, this, and this. So they really set us on a really good path, you know. And then we changed again once we realized like maybe we could even do better. And I found another another accountant who is even more in alignment with what we wanted to achieve. And then my partner, who I ended up meeting a couple years into business, like she ended up taking over a lot of the accounting. And like without that, because I'm just, you know, very ADHD, I like organizing stuff is not my skill. And especially when it came to the receipts and all that, it's just no matter how good at that I probably wanted to get, it just would never have happened. I just be, you know, they'd be picking me up off the floor, probably buried in a bunch of tax receipts with, the IRS probably knocking on my door. I don't know. But you're right. Yeah, you're totally right. You need to have really good people on your team, I think, to help with that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just one or two people, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference in your world. Because you can't, there's just so many things you can't juggle everything. You need to find out what you do best and only do that in your company. And if you can hire all the other things that people can do for you and cheaper sometimes. And I mean, there is so many companies out there, so many VAs and everything you can get your hands on. Once you get the right person and a team or whatever, it'll make your life easier.
Yeah.
How did you get into the writing the books area?
Yeah.
And what year was that when you first got into it?
Yeah. So I've always wanted to write books. And in fact, I wrote my first book when I was in junior high school. I remember sitting down for like a year with I had a bunch of yellow legal pads that my father brought home from the office. And I think we couldn't afford a typewriter. And I just wrote. Like I wrote So point is, I've been writing for a long time, but I had given up for a long time as well. Like I wrote that book back in junior high school, kind of like, you know, but I was always telling my friends like, yeah, I'm going to be a writer someday. I'm going to publish books. And, you know, your friends are like, oh yeah, sure. You know, but the thing is like that thing never left me, you know? So as time went on, became a teenager, got into working and gave the writing thing up. And that was just a stupid dream. And I just left it. But once I came to Japan, I realized like, hey, if this was possible, you know, and this is probably after I was here for like a decade, I'd say. So back in 2006, 2007, I've been here for like 7 or 8 years, still loving it. By this time I was married, had a couple of kids. But I was thinking, okay, you know, I think it's time to do something else, you know, like what could that next thing be? And I realized like, wait a minute, I've always wanted to be a writer. What about that? You know, so I picked up some more writing books and started reading a lot of books on how to publish and how to write again. I really just immersed myself back into what potentially could become this, new world that I want to create for myself. Because the one thing that I realized is like, okay, if I moved from Canada to here and created this new life for myself. And by the way, the reason I came here was because I wanted to travel around the world, which I did a lot of that. I eventually did go to Thailand. I did ride those elephants and I did all that on vacations, right? I thought, okay, the writing thing's going to be the next thing. So I came up with a plan to just, write every day, and I would show up for like an hour or two. Still had my full-time job, of course, like writing was just a hobby. And that's just how I identified it as like, but I decided I'm going to get really good at this hobby. And I just got obsessed by it, like, which is probably a good thing, depending on what you're getting obsessed by. But I just knew like, if I can really, if I can make this thing work, then, like who knows what's going to happen. But here's the thing. I spent 2 or 3 years writing we'll call it a self-help book. And I just ended up writing like 200,000 or 300,000 words. And the reason, by the way, I wrote self-help personal development books is because going back years before, I went through addiction recovery and all kinds of stuff like that. And my sponsor said, you've got to work on yourself. And they were giving me like, not just the big book, they were giving me other, like one guy gave me a book by Tony Robbins, which actually is how I got to Japan, because in the book, Awaken the Giant Within, Tony said, you got to write out your goals. So I really loved the self-help genre because it probably saved my life. So I love fiction too. I went from fiction to nonfiction.
Scott, before you keep going, I'm going to go back to the Awakening the Giant Within was probably the last Tony Robbins, his book that I loved, right? His newer, I'm not really into the newer stuff and how he does stuff, but I really, myself personally, that was the one I really enjoyed and all that stuff back in the day. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Great. Yeah, you know what? I just moved, so I don't have it here, but it's always up on my shelf. The same book that I got like 35 years ago from like someone had given me. I still refer to it every day. Love that book, but also because it has I think, some emotional value as well. Like every time I look at it, it's like that's the reason I got here. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I mean, Tony Robbins was, I think, the best back then. He's good
Mm,
now, but back then and maybe it was just the time and everything in my life that it worked. But I was at an event and he was there speaking, and he was like, bring your arms out now. Okay. Now breathe in through your heart. I was in the medical field in the military. I'm like, that's not how that works. So I'm arguing in my head with everything he's saying. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me.
yeah,
And so I stick with the older stuff, but I'll let you talk. I apologize.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never been to an event. I'd love to get to one. Yeah, we'll make that happen soon, I think. But yeah, that was I just and actually I was using his book as a model, like it's like because I was really into like I want this book to be well structured, well written. So I was reading his book, plus I had a bunch of other books as well, Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn and all those
Mhm.
books too. But I was just reading those kinds of books aggressively because I wanted to be as good of a writer as these guys. So I would spend my time like writing, and that just went on for a few years. Eventually, and this was before self-publishing too. Like I did eventually end up self-publishing my books. We'll get into that maybe a little bit more, and then they got picked up by
We,
publishers. But
we were going to get there. We were
yeah,
going to get there. Yeah.
yeah. But what happened, I think, around like after writing so much content, I was like, okay, I need an editor. So then I went online and found this company that does editing. And it's like, I need a book cover. And that was when I discovered like Fiverr, which is where I do most of my outsourcing these days, like 95% of it. Like I'm on there every day hiring people. But back then it was, they just kicked off their platform. It's like, oh, I can get a cover for $5, So these little things just kept popping up. I kept putting these little pieces together until eventually, actually had a book together, and it took like 3 or 4 years, and it was a nice size. Again, I just moved, don't have it here in front of me, but it's like this nice size little book. I actually had 4 books, because I've done so much material. But when Amazon launched their self-publishing platform, because I started looking for publishers too and getting a few rejection letters, and
Right.
when they launched their self-publishing platform, I was like, why not? Why not just put it up on there? In the meantime, if I still want to get a publisher, I can still pursue that. But at least the book will be like, to be honest, my goal wasn't to sell 1 million copies and do all this. I mean, it is now maybe, but back then it was just like to get the book published and have my name on the book. Like that was the goal, was to become an author, to be, to identify myself as a writer. It's like a big deal. And I did it. So I put the book up there. Yeah, didn't have a great cover. The title was okay, and book material was good, I guess. But eventually I did go back and revise everything. But that was the beginning of it. Probably when I first self-published was 2012, 2013, I think, when I put the first book out there.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon changed it. That's where I did my book, was through Amazon self-publishing, and it's great. I mean, makes it so much easier. And when you self-publish, you own your material. When you have someone publish you, they own your material.
Yeah,
and that's what people understand. And so if you ever want to talk about that book or certain things in there, and it's been published by somebody else, it's not your words. I explain to people to understand this. If you ever watch Seinfeld, when Kramer sold his story to Elaine's boss, and then he could never talk about his stories anymore. And that's basically how that works. So.
Right. Yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes. And by the way, I have a ritual every night before bed. I watch one Seinfeld episode. So
my wife can't stand it, so I watch it when she's not around. Yeah, or I have my headphones on. Yeah, so I enjoy it. It's just it's funny, and you don't have to. And it's from our same with the other show that I liked was Cheers. So and thank goodness they have on reruns, because I was young at the time.
Yeah. Well, actually, coincidentally, those are my 2 favorite shows of all time. I don't watch any other sitcoms, but I mean, I have, but those 2 shows are probably like in my time vault. They'll always be there, just great material.
Yeah. How did you? So when you self-publish now, you upload it yourself, or do you hire a company to upload it for you?
No, I do it all myself still, because I can do it so quickly. Like I've done so many of them now. I think we're up to 35, 40 books.
I can upload that many books. I had no idea that many books.
And I think I'm published. Do the Hard Things First. The first book is published now in 16 languages maybe. So we can kind of talk about that a little bit if you want to. Like eventually when I published that book coming out of COVID, it got picked up by, like, I started getting offers from overseas publishers, like outside of the US. This actually opened up a whole new industry for me. Like I didn't realize that there were all these other international publishers who potentially could buy your book. Like they buy the rights to it for that country only. So I still own the rights to the material. So what I still do is I publish the English version of all my books, and then I sell it to the publishers in India, Germany. I mean, I can name a whole bunch of others, but like the current book that just came out in the series, the fourth book on how to defeat shiny object syndrome, that's already being translated as we speak into like 3 or 4 of the languages. So that's the thing, is like I'll publish it, but then as soon as I do, and actually before I publish it, I'll pitch it to these other publishers, and they're already lining up to get them. So kind of created this little additional revenue stream for myself. But the thing is, when you build out enough revenue streams, I think for me, like passive income is like, of course, the meaning of it is like, you don't have to work and you got money coming in. Well, you can get enough of these publishers on board, then they're doing the work for you. And you're only getting like 10 to 12% per book sale. But then when you've got 5, 10 or 20 of these spread out across the globe, they can really add up. So that was a big game changer, I think. And just, anybody who's listening, if you are putting a book out there, just keep in mind, put your book on Amazon. Sure. Great way to start. And that's probably where a lot of publishers may discover you, is if you can get your book up to a high enough ranking, because it's all about the visibility. Mm-hmm. That's what really happened with me, is my first few books didn't sell very well. And then or at all. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have a marketing background. I would say I was very good at sales. In fact, I was terrified of sales. I didn't want to be like a salesman out there selling my product, but I realized sales and marketing is actually what you got to get good at. So what am I doing every day? Getting good at it, And then I think eventually I had books 4 and 5 when they came out. They just kind of kicked off. And then again, it's all about the visibility. And if you can get really good ranking, not just on Amazon, but of course, that's where most people are probably going to go and see your book, So you can get it up to a really good ranking on that. A good ranking, I mean, could be like under 10,000 maybe, or 5,000. I mean, the higher you get it, the better. But then, I started getting, podcast interviews and radio shows and things like that. So anyway, kind of went off track a little bit, but the publishers though, when they reached out to me to start publishing the book, you had a good point there, where you sell your book to a publisher, they own the material, but the good thing is they do all the translating. They just buy the rights to it for let's say India, for example, where I have
right.
4 publishers I work with there, and they just buy the rights for that book, for that continent or that country, right? Or that language, I should say. And once you sell it in that language, then that's it. You can't sell it to another publisher in that language, in that country, right? So the thing is because there's a lot of languages out there in a lot of countries, one book potentially could be in 40, 50, 60 markets.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it's got to be the right book for those markets. So I wrote a book that was about mortgages, financial freedom, building personal wealth through home ownership, which wouldn't translate well in India and other places. So it has to be Go ahead.
Sorry, no, that's a great point. So I did so when they reached out to me and they said, we want to, publish your book. And I was like, okay, great. And then they wanted to publish more of them. And then one company bought 10 titles. So I was started thinking, okay, well, obviously I'm writing the right books, but what are the right books? So, and you're right. Yeah. If you have a book that's very specific to, tax law in the US or the UK, that's probably not going to translate very well to any other countries, obviously, right? So I started asking the publishers, I was like, what kind of books are you looking for? And they would actually tell us, they said well, we're looking for a book on, wealth. And they gave me a list. And so I got busy and started making those books. It's if those are the kind of books they want, why don't I just do the research now? They're telling me what they need. And then I went out and created the books, because I know if they're looking, and by the way, those kinds of books, I write books to, I guess, a wide market, like self-help, personal development. I didn't really start out with that intention, though. Those are just the kind of books I love to read, like Tony Robbins and all that. So I wanted to write books like that. Fortunately, they just happen to be the kind of books that a lot of publishers are looking for. Eventually got a deal in Japan too. I have a publisher here now, so they've done a few books as well. Yeah, it's just if you do the research and you know what people are looking for, you can create the product, and then you'll have at least like people are lining up to buy it. So which is probably how a lot of, I think, if you look at like what Alex Hermosi and a lot of these other business gurus are talking about, is like they do the research first, they find out what people want, they launch a product, maybe they'll launch the initial product, get the feedback, and then they'll just continue to improve it as they move forward. So.
Well, that's like I interviewed a lady and she was just talking about her courses that she does. Same thing. She goes to her people and goes, I'm thinking about doing this course, and then put it out there for selling. If people want to buy it and whatever, then she creates the course. And she says the problem is most people create the course and then to see if there's a market for it. And you should do the complete opposite. Kind of like what you did with the books is now you know what these publishers are looking for and you write the books for them. I mean, that's kind of what I heard. I'm sure, exactly. But I'm sure it's also stuff that you want to get out. My first question is, did you ever publish your book from junior high or high school, the one you were writing?
I did not. And to be honest, I don't even know where the notes are. That was going back like 40 years. However, I remember what the story was about, the title of the book. It was like a sci-fi book. And by the way, and I love fiction. I still like before I decided to write and publish the self-help books, I was actually I was doing fiction. I went back to writing fiction and I put together like a few books. Now, I did not publish them yet, but I do intend on publishing them, and I'm going to. The thing is, I just wasn't expecting the self-help books to really take off. I was like, I'm just going to put out a few books and then move over back to writing fiction. But things started taking off. I got really busy, and then I got more ideas for more books, and then it was just like this treadmill, and then momentum kicked in, and a decade later, I'm still pushing forward. So I don't know at what point that is going to stop, but or maybe it's not. What I intend to do is bring somebody else into the business who I can teach my system to, and then have them publish the book. So you had asked a question earlier, just, am I still uploading the book?
Scott, can you hold 1 second? All right. Sorry. I apologize. You were saying before I interrupted you?
Yeah, no, it's just going back to when I first started doing the writing. I was writing, I put together a few fiction books, and I wanted to publish those eventually. But once the self-help stuff started taking off, I just got so busy, momentum kicked in and everything, that I just haven't been able to go back to it, or I haven't put the time into going back to it, So I think at some stage, I've got a pretty good system built out now in terms of like creating content, putting the books out there, outsourcing all the stuff. And I'm just going to build a team, put together. Like I've got a virtual assistant, of course, and just that's probably it. And then my partner takes care of the books, but just need a couple more people on board for marketing and creating more content so we can grow a bit bigger. But I look at like solopreneurs in the field, like Justin Welsh. I just love his material, and I follow him all the time. And he's claims he's a solopreneur. He's got the virtual assistant. His wife's in the business, and he does really well. So I don't want to hire a whole bunch of people and make myself even busier. I do believe in the 4-hour workday, which I'm trying to get to eventually. But it really just comes down to like having good systems in place, and then bringing people on board and teaching them what your systems are, and then having them create the playbooks and make things basically like buying back your time, if I can quote Dan Martell, one of my favorite books. So yeah, a little bit of just some insight into what our goals are moving forward. But
now, I saw that Scott Allan Publishing, is that something you're doing for other people?
Good question. I have two sites. One is, so the Scott Allan Publishing, that's actually when we registered the LLC here in Japan, that was the name we had registered it under. The reason I started with that was because of the international publishing deals that we have. I have a website that I set up for the publishers. When they go there, they can check to see what books are available, and if they want to buy the books and just do business with us. ScottAllanBooks.com. That's where we just set that up in the last probably 3 to 6 months, where we're selling the books directly on Shopify. So that was a big job. Got all the books up on Shopify for direct sales. We'll be adding the courses to there. I'm working on the courses now. As to your point about, I'm just like asking people what they want to see in the course, kind of probably do a mini course and then, make it better after that. But Yeah, the Scott Allan Publishing was just, it's a little bit confusing because a lot of people say, well, are you publishing other people's books? And my answer is no, I don't plan on doing that. I just want to publish more of my own books. So it was just, that's just the umbrella company, but underneath that, I've got several other domain names. So.
Well, the reason I think people think that is because it says, I help people to create the life they want to own.
Yeah. So yeah, we were going to tweak that a little bit because I think it's a little bit it's not clear what exactly it is that we do. So I'm going to be working on that a bit. And again, like a lot of these things where you put things up, you put them out there, and then you get some feedback, and you just tweak stuff or change it as you go.
So, because people want help to do their books, just so you know.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah. And I've been like I work with another company. I've been coaching for like a long time, so I already do a lot of that. But I think like outside of the helping people to publish and market their books, which is probably the strength that I lean into mostly is when people launch their books, they don't really know what to do with them, because I certainly didn't back in the day. But that's the one thing where I walk people through that process, and I'm still the good thing. I'm always learning stuff too. I mean, so like probably like you, I've got courses and books and all this stuff that I put in at least an hour a day going through, some kind of course material that's, basically like moving. Either I'm working on myself or I'm working on my business, or both. Or as Jim Rohn said, you should work harder on yourself than on your business. But I tend to try and balance both of them. So I figure if you can work on yourself 70% of the time, your business is probably going to do a whole lot better, which is true because back during COVID, and we all know what happened during that year. When I found myself at home, isolated, working, I think I was working in my business, not on my business. Things weren't going very well. So, being isolated, I found like being an entrepreneur is a great thing, but being isolated in one location for an extended period of time just wasn't very healthy. So,
no, it's not. Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you being here. How do people find you?
Yeah, if they can go to scottallanbooks.com. You can check out the books on there. Like we're selling the books directly on there. Of course, they can go to Amazon, find the books on there as well. And if they just go to Google and plug in Scott Allan interviews or books, they're going to find a whole slew of stuff on there as well. So, and social media sites as well. So, and LinkedIn, specifically like LinkedIn or Instagram.
And that's Scott Allan.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. Just so people don't think it's the other way. Make sure that there's a couple different spelling of Allan. Scott, it really was nice getting to know you today. I appreciate you being here, and thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's been great.